Ugh, you know what? The suburbs was growing on me. I was just like, oh, I'm exposed to nature. The sun is occasionally out. It's so sad how gloomy and it's been this year. It's been cold. It's been snowy. I love snow. But for such a long time, especially here, and then it's been extremely rainy, which is, plants, nature need rain, but for some reason it feels particularly depressing, especially here, where I moved to in the suburbs. Mind you, I am from New York City, so I'm someone that actually felt rather calm when it rains. Like, it did help me feel at ease, but for some reason it just depresses me here. And it's interesting because I can't help but make a connection with the current political state and of this country, and what it's surfaced, which is like the ugliest of people in terms of their heart, their lack of compassion, their lack of empathy towards the world and people. And I cannot help but make that connection there, where it's just like, why does it feel depressing? Or why does it feel, it's not even the weather I feel, it's just like the overall, and it might be the environment. Once again, I've spoken in the past about, the suburbs or these parts, being very right leaning, conservative. There is like no diversity. Personally speaking, I do have very few like that I've seen that are perhaps outside of the white community, or to some degree outside of the white community. And it's saddening, because it's like, okay, this is the USA. Like, it's hard for me to believe that the US, which was indigenous lands made up of native communities, at one point or another became extremely white, extremely non-diverse, and isn't a representation of what it truly was once upon a time. So it's difficult, and I've mentioned this to my partner a lot. Like, the simple fact that I've always wanted to leave and be somewhere where there is more POCs. And it's interesting because I think it also, well, actually it does lead me to realize that I find that what is happening now is an attempt to try to reduce this, or eliminate the possibility of this country becoming predominantly black and brown. I'm not sure if any one of you have seen a magazine. I remember I think it was like National Geographic, where they said like the future of tomorrow, or what they expect tomorrow's, I guess, like quintessential American to look like, is racially ambiguous, which is interesting given the fact that we're in current times where I feel like Make America Great is more about Make America White again. Let's keep it real. And I heard something yesterday that really, actually, I had been thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I don't think it's necessarily, with everything that has been going on with the deportations, but also this attempt to bring immigrants that are white to this country. And I feel like also that system in itself has allowed more white, especially Europeans, to come here, with this under legality, right? Opposed to like brown, black communities where unfortunately they've had to flee from certain circumstances or situations, mind you, that have been put in place, like wars. All of that is a lot of American Western meddling. Let's keep it real. So it's interesting to see that happen, where it's like, POCs are fleeing their countries, going to these Western places for a quote unquote better life, although there's so many issues systematically, and it's led to so much that is interesting, because I think I read at one point or another a comment as well that said like, colonization has also, in many ways, has never or will never be in favor. Like anything you do, and I always say this, anything that you do with evil intentions, with malice, and I find the colonization is a great representation of just that, is that there's always going to be something that comes back, right? Their attempt to try to keep societies or location or place white or predominantly white has also backfired, because POCs, they've created so much instability. The white Western nations, colonized nations in predominantly Black and brown countries, and then they're surprised that the Black and brown community comes to these locations. But you know what? It also, they also are so malicious, let's keep it real, in terms of ensuring or trying or always attempting to keep the Black and brown community down, right? There was slavery, right? That was free labor at no cost or no expense to the white community. And I find that what happens today with a lot of the immigrant communities, be that of Latin American origins, they are paid little to nothing. There was actually someone that I spoke to, since I was working within healthcare and I assisted a lot of immigrant communities there, or predominantly like immigrant individuals that unfortunately didn't have the resources and what they needed to be able to cover their expenses, their bills, right? Within healthcare. And one of the individuals mentioned not being paid by a white person, that he pretty much stated he was a white racist. Let's keep it real. I find that a lot of the white community or people take advantage of the Latinos that don't have papers. They don't have to pay them, right? And therefore there's many situations and circumstances where that very thing occurs. And it's interesting because if we really go back to history, let's take a moment. Latin Americans are primarily of indigenous, are also of the indigenous population and community. They're natives to the Americas. So it's always mind-boggling. And I always say this in my videos. I say, why European Americans? Because it's interesting how they've been able to label everyone as an outsider, calling the Black community African Americans, but there is no European American term. Why aren't we saying that? Why aren't we normalizing that, right? And it's just because they've always wanted to appear like they were the natives or they were the original people of this land, but they're not. And any person with some understanding and knowledge of history would know that. And it's so also another thing that really, really angers me is that the white community has always villainized other communities and groups. And this is something I also say, like, the white community needs to look in the mirror. They're the only ones that have been bullying, threatening, harassing, policing, the whole nine. Like, they've killed indigenous populations in the beginning of time. They killed Black communities, populations in the beginning of time here and also around the globe. And they continue to do that, all in the name of protecting their land, right? We see that with Israel and Palestine, where it's communities of color, right? And it's always mind-boggling because it's led me to also ask myself, if the individuals that are claiming Israel nowadays, especially those that feel like entitled to being Jewish, right? Which are of European ancestry, how are you actually from that land, given the fact that the individuals that were originally from that land look more or less, especially those that are actually still inhabiting those regions, look completely different than you? So it's colonization. Like, are you actually Jewish, right? Because the individuals that originally inhabited it didn't look like you. So did you just adapt Judaism or that title or the chosen people or whatever it is because it served you well? And why not also implement that very theory of the Aryan race, right? Because of the climate and location that they were in, the persecution they experienced in Europe, and that just helps them feel like they deserve more respect, and they deserve, because their pigmentation is different, right? It's like, just because you're white, you deserve to be treated right. And that's, I feel like, the message of, and naturally that is something that they've spoken about in Zionism. Where does that stem from? Where does that idea, it makes me question, like, are you like actually from those lands? First and foremost, it just seems like you're colonizers that came and stole land and adapted this title that benefits you, but you're not really, you're not really the original people of that region. Yeah, so where is the authenticity? It just causes me to question whether what is being said is even true. What else? And there's been unfortunately stereotyping, labeling, and this is once again the villainization that has occurred and that has been pointed and geared towards the communities of color. There's always negative stereotypes. It's interesting. There's always negative stereotypes about communities of color, but we don't ever take a moment to say, okay, the white community, those of European ancestry, their ancestors colonized these lands, created instability, not only here, but also globally, and have continued to create instability globally for gain, right? For selfish gain. So not only do they leverage their circumstances, do they live better? Do they have more resources? Do they have access to more resources? And they continue to pass that down to only their community and their generations. And murder is illegal. And it's interesting how there's always this talk of Latinos, because it seems to be the target and focus. Latinos, or those of Latin American ancestry, are illegals, when what was done by colonizers was illegal, by your ancestors was illegal. So yeah, it's always this pointing and trying to deflect from the real problem, which from what I see is just it's the white community, right? And it's also saddening how, I see a lot of different treatment here, specifically towards, especially like more minority. It seems that the community that exists for the most part in this location, and I noticed this actually when I was living in the West Coast. I noticed that there was a heavy population, or the majority were Latinos and whites, and they were the ones that were coexisting in that environment. And it's interesting because when I've been in these areas, it's like a lot of racism, and it's unfortunately also reflected or seen in my experience with a lot of my or within the Latino community. I'm a Latin American. And within my very own community, and naturally, as something we need to tackle, and something I talk about too. I talk about that a lot because I have no room for that. I have no room for colorism, racism. If you've seen my videos, I specifically talk about the anti-Blackness within the Latino community that needs to end, period. I never understood why the Latino community and other minority groups, let's keep it real, other minority groups that are brown, want to pander to whiteness. I do see that they want to perhaps gain position, gain power, gain acceptance. Why are we trying to gain acceptance when that very community stereotypes us, or doesn't even want to coexisting within their spaces or places? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, how is that benefiting communities of color? I've never understood this desire to be accepted, or this desire to assimilate to whiteness. There has never been any acceptance on behalf, or they've never welcomed us, or they've never accepted communities of color. I mean, even history says or shows that, where individuals or those that colonize the land, once again, the white community, the white people, exclusively hired white people. And that's, again, continuing and propelling generational wealth when you're only providing access and opportunities to the white community. And we see that in many different, like, smaller ways here in today's world, where, I mean, I feel like it impacts in a great way, honestly, because when I look at the structure of many companies, I notice that it's predominantly white at the very top. There's no diversity whatsoever. And that's, once again, like, they're going to have their biases. They're going to have, a lot of them are racist, even if they're liberals. It's always this interesting thing where we often think, oh, liberals are not racist. It's very mind-boggling, because as someone that born and bred in New York City, I've encountered so many Karens, and I can, without a doubt, question, like, I have no doubts that it's hinged on internalized, or what I find a lot of biases and beliefs about certain communities of color. Like, why would you target me when maybe someone else that's right next to me or around me is white and doing something, and you just want to police me, right? It's like there's often this targeting, and this is something that has been documented time and time again on YouTube. We see so many white people policing, so many white people harassing not only the brown community, the black community. A lot of people have shared how when they were younger, they've been, they've dressed in their traditional attire, and even now today, in today's day, they're stealing that. And they've been doing that since the very beginning of time. Let's keep it real. They've done that to every community, with like Native Americans, the indigenous community, Latinos, from the earrings, the jewelry, right, within the indigenous communities, to the bags, right, that are from, it's always happens. It's this adaptation, this stealing, this selling of a culture that you're not even from. And also talking about the history and experience of the black and brown community when you're not even from the black or brown community. It's like, every opportunity to speak, it's always been given, or the white people have, without any second guess, without any reservation. They've proudly, taken the mic, stolen the mic. Let's keep it real, and spoken for the people that actually know and lived and understand that plight. And that's one of the many ways. There continues to be, and I've experienced it in the workplace, where it's interesting that all the people of color that are working outside, like doing all the outreach experiences, while the white individuals are working within the offices, and they don't even have the degrees. As someone that has graduate degree, it's interesting how family members were hired. It really just was that. And there's this conversation and talk about merit, but it's more of an excuse to continue to propel the white man and women forward. It's not an attempt to really embody merit, because merit has never been, and I've said this before as well, merit has never been part of the white community. The white community has been given opportunities. The black and brown community has had to earn those opportunities, because we have to pursue further education. We have to speak a certain way. We have to walk a certain way, do certain things. And we're often, and also not welcomed. They want the skill set, and I speak on this as well. They want the skill sets, right? They want someone that speaks another language. They want the representation when it concerns, how you look, and the fact that you will probably appeal to individuals that look like you. But they also don't pay the very individual that is doing more, because they're bilingual and they're stepping in for you, that is white and not bilingual. And it's just so saddening to see the disparities. There's inequality, and it's right there in their face. Naturally, of course, those that don't want to admit that this exists because it doesn't benefit them, again, won't care to admit it. But they know it, because I've had conversations with, interestingly enough, a white Trump supporter who did spew a lot of stereotypes and interestingly enough, but not surprising, like at first denied there was racism and then verified, oh yes, there is racism. Yeah, because there is racism. And racism is not only exists here, but exists in other places around the globe, which is why I find it so important to speak on true history. And something I also spoke about, because I'm currently, I circled back into education sector. And one thing I noticed within these neck of the woods, this is something that, once again, when you have individuals that are not representative of your community, of the community that's being served, that's something I notice here so much. So many white teachers, so many individuals that haven't walked the walk, right? Talk the talk. Like they don't understand the experience of the Black and brown community. Why are they educating us and feeding, attempting to educate us and trying to, spoon feeding us some palatable white-washed history? I'm not interested. Tell me the truth. Give me the truth. And this is what I can appreciate about New York City. Is New York City, in my experience, has had a lot in just growing up and even working within the education sector a few years back. I remember the majority of those serving or being staff members and leading the way were part of the Black and brown community, and they were serving the Black and brown community. Here we have white teachers serving or teaching the Black and brown community, and they're clueless. They have no idea. How are they leading when they don't even understand the life and experience of a Black and brown person? They're not leading us into victory. They're going to lead us into this lack of understanding of one's own identity, right? And I find that that's something also that's mentioned a lot of times within individuals that are born and bred in suburban areas that are predominantly white, where there's, obvious racism. And that's something that I've heard about the schools around here in this specific town, where it's right-leaning. And not saying that the town neighboring, which is more diverse, is not right-leaning. It seems to be a very prevalent thing. And it's kind of scary given the fact that it's like not too far from liberal cities. But, still till this day, 2025, when we think we would be, in a place where individuals are more knowledgeable about certain issues and the issues that affect communities of color, but obviously if it doesn't benefit, once again, if it doesn't benefit you, and this is what the reality of it is, that the white community knows that it doesn't benefit them to be able to leverage the Black and brown community, because they don't want to lose their power. They don't want to lose what they have. They have all the benefits. And it's saddening, because yesterday I was reading a review regarding the town, and someone said that the teachers that are all white, I actually interviewed for this specific district, all the staff were white. I was the only brown person. I mean, that's not a surprise though. Like, this is a predominantly white area. And I remember seeing a Latina young lady sitting in somewhere, like in a room, and she looked upset. And there was this other young Latina coming in late, and she also, had this expression on her face where it's just like, I can't help but wonder. And I know for a fact that this specific area, this specific district is and does not treat communities of color and people of color. They don't. And here's the thing that I've noticed within not only here, this town, but the neighboring town, because as you know, I left my healthcare position most recently, is that they even like the POCs, or I don't even know if they're POCs. As you know, the Latino community is racially diverse. But a lot of Latinos, and this is the reality of it. And you know what? I just realized I don't want to say this term because it's like, it might be, muted. So they like to do, and it phrases it in, or I guess like what it is that they like to be, and another way that I can put it, they like to be the white and man and women's lapdog. And they would succumb to, and they will easily and quickly succumb to the white man and women just to garner something, right? To gain something. And I can't help but wonder whether if the powers were to change, let's say the Black and brown communities were to be the ones leading the way, they would be the very ones to also change teams. As we've seen, within politicians, the conservative politicians saying that they're willing to endorse Democrats. Please stay on your lane. Like, you've chosen your path. You've chosen your path. I appreciate that people are coming into awareness, but I feel like it's not because they're coming into actual awareness. I feel like it's because they're losing something. They're losing something that they feel like they deserve, and whether that be money, power, and it's for surface level reasons. It's not because they actually care. It's not because they are understanding of the plight of the other person, right? They could care less. It's all about them. So I've always second guessed individuals that are trying to switch teams and trying to last minute, and those are the very people. And I'm always saddened because it's something that I also, once again, I speak about the Latino community and showcasing a lot of anti-Blackness. And I'm so disgusted. I'm really so disgusted by that type of behavior. And it's just, these are the very people that would, if the Black, brown communities were to be in power, they would go there because that's where the money and wealth would be, or that's where, the power would be. So that's one thing I've seen here, where it's a lot of even communities of color not recognizing that there's an issue and not realizing that they're treated almost like second-class citizens. I also mentioned this in a previous video where I find that the climate of this area doesn't leverage the lives of the Black and brown community. In New York City, there was Black and brown management. There were Black and brown supervisors. There were individuals that looked like myself leading the way. And here it's predominantly white people that want to lowball you when it concerns pay and make excuses as to why they should pay you less. Which I guess this leads me to say something also that I feel so bad about, because it's really, I feel so heartbroken when I hear communities of color, especially young individuals that are growing up, that they're Black and brown, they're young, they have so much life ahead when they're living in these predominantly white areas. They grow up in these predominantly white areas and they have to experience bullying, racism, they're mocked, they're outcasted. I mean, I've met so many people that were working alongside me that were Latinas, growing up in this very town, going to the very district, saying that they didn't even have friends because no one wanted to be their friend. And they're Latinas, that some are even like white passing. But yeah, we want to sometimes always say, oh, you're more acceptable, you're more palatable, yet still, and that's why I say you are doing yourself a disservice. And it doesn't matter. And in this case, it doesn't even matter if you're white from Europe. To be honest, someone made a great point. Even those that have accents, I've seen it myself. I remember going to Vermont when I was younger. Naturally, I was born here, raised here. I remember having EV assistants and, the individuals assisting me, they were very kind at a shop that I went to. But as soon as the individuals that I was doing that travel with, they spoke to the very individuals at the shop, and they were Ukrainian and Russian, of Ukrainian and Russian. No, they're actually, they were from the country, so it wasn't their parents. They spoke. It was like this expression all of a sudden of disapproval. So that's always interesting to see that even individuals, yes, obviously there are racial aspects that 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 make it better, and says, you know, the white community has and will receive or be more acceptable on a global scale. That is a given. That's, I'm not trying to deny that. That is reality, where race really does play a role. And that's exactly why I make this, and I specifically mentioned on my description, I'm like, I really want to, you know, have this channel for the Black and brown community, because I feel like a lot of people are stranded in areas or are in places, and it wasn't because of their choosing. I was fortunate to grow up in New York City, have Black and brown friends. That's the environment that I grew up in, period. All the people I saw, and it's sad because it's getting super gentrified, and it's like, literally, I'm sorry, but really it feels like Europe now, where my parents are residing. It's sad, you know? So, and, you know, it's interesting. And the reason why I also say it's sad, it's not even only because another community, right, is in a community that has never accepted or cares to accept or welcome a lot of times, and most of the time, Black and brown communities. It's also because they come into these communities and then they look at you oddly, like you're the problem. And it's like, honey, you're in the environment that I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic community. But yeah, you're giving us side eye. Like, why do you come here? Like, what is the point of coming to areas that are Black and brown and then making the Black and brown people feel uncomfortable? Like, I never understood that. Please stay in white predominant areas if you just want white people in those spaces. And I've noticed this not only where my parents are from, which is a different borough than another borough that I was working in. And I say that because I try to be very mindful of what I share, like everything I share, especially online. I'm not someone that's online beyond YouTube. So it's something that I've noticed when all is said and done within numerous boroughs, where it's like the gentrification is happening, and the very white people that, you know, communities of color don't want to deal with, like communities of color leave areas like this because they don't feel safe and comfortable in, and they're coming to our places, and it's like, why are you following us? Please stop. We just want to be around a bunch of Black and brown people. Like, we would like to be not the other for once. And this is one thing that leads me once again to say that I've really, and something I've shared a lot with my partner, it's just like, I don't know if I could see myself in the long haul being in the USA, given the fact that people of color will always be the other. I would love to be in a country or place that I look like the people that are around me, that I don't stand out and I'm not policed or harassed or treated differently and treated poorly just because of my pigment or just because of my features or whatever it may be, right? So yeah, with that being said, I just want to give my advice, because I feel like I did, you know, go on a completely different trail or rant. You know, I was about to talk about how certain parents especially POCs, bring their kids to these areas, and it's such a shift in culture. It's such a shift in treatment, and I really don't feel like it's worth bringing and having your child. Your child has the room to succeed a lot more in an environment where they're supported. And most importantly, they also have individuals that are within leadership, within those that are, in other words, staff, that look like them, and that are teaching, and that are, you know, the principals, and that are assistant principals. that's super important because representation does matter, and people will always be preferential. And once again, this is more or less hinged on tribalism. The white community only cares to leverage the white community. This is something we've seen historically and continues to occur today. You know, they see themselves, and the person sees themselves in that person, and therefore they feel more compelled to be kind, to be nice, to be supportive. Hey, I feel like that too about the Black and brown community. I'm always, you know, trying to shine light when I hear something that is out of like the other day I was having a conversation, or more so the young lady. She was young, very very young, just a kid, honestly, and she was in the classroom, and she said something that was and she's Latina. That was, let's keep it real, racist. And it was about another minority community. And honestly, I had to check her because it's like so sad that communities of color even normalize racism towards one another. And it's not, you know, we often think it's like only specific race, but it's like other minority communities in general, like literally every other community, where it's like they're throwing jabs at one another. Like, how is that conducive? How is that bringing unity to us? It's not really, it really isn't. And furthermore, it's so sad that the Latino community, because it was directed towards a community that we're actually tied to. If anyone knows, there's this understanding or theory that the indigenous communities actually we have descendants from Asia, East Asia. So please, let's inform our kids. Let's ensure that we are not being racist towards one another, because I mean, that's how the colonizer, it's all about dividing and conquering, right? And they've been doing that since the beginning of time, trying to make differentiations. Oh, just because you're lighter skinned, you, quote unquote, you know, deserve respect or better treatment. That's ridiculous. That's something that they've created in order for them to only benefit off, you know, the world. They had the ammunition. They had all that they needed to intimidate people. They had weapons. They needed that in order to intimidate and confuse and distort ideas and beliefs that are not even founded on, if you know, if you have any ties to faith. I'm someone that comes from a faith-based background. Nonetheless, I have my sentiments about organized religion, but I do have a faith-based background and would more or less consider myself agnostic. I can say this much about the faith that my background is hinged on. It's love thy neighbor, right? Love thy neighbor as yourself. But also, when the Divine One created everyone, and he didn't make differentiations. He created them for a reason. And I think this is something very simple, very probably small to many, but when I see nature, when I see the environment, I see diversity. And I need to also be mindful of the time because I have something to run to. But when I see what is around me, it's diverse. It's colorful. There's so much, it's so connected to the reality of this world, where if there wasn't the level of diversity that there is, it wouldn't be as beautiful as it is. Let's keep it real. Everyone brings something new to the table, something that we can learn and draw from, and something that can help us grow from as well. So when I unfortunately see people continuously propelling these ideas that colonization has instilled in the minds of people, especially people of color, like we see that so heavily in our communities, Latino community, the Black community, the East Asian community, you know, and I'm so inspired by, and I've mentioned this a lot of times before, by the Black community, how they've been, hey, we're never going to beat them. And we have to embrace who we are, our identity, and we have to walk boldly. And I feel like other communities of color really need to come into this, really do, because trying to be someone you're not, you'll never be that person. You'll never be part of that community. You'll never be welcomed. But what you can do is embrace who you are, showcase love to yourself, know who your identity, know your roots, know the beauty of it. I mean, I say this, and this is something more or less superficial. Like, let's be real. Like, despite the evil, like, let's be honest. We were ageless in many ways. And I know this is so minute, but it's like so many different things. And there is a reason as to why the white community is so intimidated by the Black and brown community. The Black and brown community offer the resiliency that they don't have because they've never been able to foster that. We've had to work for everything that we've achieved and earned. And most importantly, we've had to labor, which has created so much strength, bodily strength. Let's keep it real. Like, who dominates in certain sectors? Like, and it's individuals trying to even get to our level. But also the rich culture, the multiple languages, the rich history in terms of like religion and the tribes that existed. There was so much. Naturally, there's an ugly history that unfortunately has come in to play with within our peoples, right? Within our communities, our groups, because of colonization. But let's target what and how that issue came to be, because we often try to blame the other community, minority community, but we don't even take an opportunity to criticize the very ones that have created so much instability in our regions, in our places. They're the ones that have led to all of this divisive energy and behavior. Let's start putting them or making them accountable for their behavior, and let's stop trying to pander. We will never be, we do not want to be, we do not care to assimilate, we do not care to assimilate to a community that literally murdered the native, the indigenous people of this land. How does that even make sense? The original people of these lands were not white Europeans. This is native land, and we should have that respect for native territory, indigenous lands. But also in other places around the world, Australia, let's not forget, Canada, let's not forget. And you guys can name many other countries that exist, have been colonized. I mean, much of the Caribbean has been colonized. Let's keep it real. Africa, and it's this attempt also within the Middle East has been happening forever. The want and desire to access the natural resources, and then claim it's just because of other reasons, right? For the protection of the American people, or for trying to change the politics of that country because it doesn't align with your country. Excuse me, mind your own business first and foremost. Like, I feel like America has meddled in so many international affairs, and all they need to be focused on is making this country better, period. It's not about meddling into other affairs and causing instability in the process. Like, it's caused so much instability in the Middle East and continues to, and it's all because of oil, of the natural resources that exist. Don't tell me it's because of another reason, because you want something that they have, period. Same with Africa. See, I'm glad Ibrahim is rising. Good. May God, or the divine one, there is one, protect him and keep him, because seriously, I'm so over this narrative of these people are dangerous outside in this world. And it's like, no, they're just trying to exist and live. Please leave them alone. Thank you. And the same thing for communities of color. And that's one thing I want to say, that, communities of color, please be aware of the fact, especially if you live in another country and you're trying to come to America. I know there's no one's trying to come to America nowadays. Let's keep it real. But when all is said and done, there's education opportunities that are better in other places. Let's be honest. Don't put yourself in a position where you're experiencing racism. And I understand, and I feel like a lot of immigrant communities or internationals don't necessarily experience it in full totality, like communities of color that have been here, born and raised, been here for many generations. But please look at the stories, listen to the people that are are from your community, your culture, look more like you. It doesn't even have to be from your community culture. Listen to their stories, because a lot of them will tell you that the racism that exists in this country and the poor treatment towards communities of color and people that are not white, that are not of European ancestry, what their treatment is, says enough. Like, why? Please don't support. And I feel like the same for individuals, communities of color. If you're listening, this is something I've done personally, and I'm going to do, is that I won't be, I don't foresee myself ever traveling to Europe. Naturally, I don't want to say all of Europe and all of the people, and I know this is very bold, but it's just like, colonizers are from Europe. Let's keep it real. And this idea that Europe is better than America or other countries and whatever it may be, like once again, Canada was colonized. It had indigenous communities there. So it's just this idea that these other places are better. No, their history is also hinged on colonization. And, I feel more compelled as a person of color to always go to the continent of Africa, go to, explore more of East Asia, go to Latin America. And this is my prerogative. This is more of my attempt to say, I'm not supporting colonization. I don't care in what shape, way, or form that is. I know that there are a lot of individuals, be that from Europe or of European ancestry, that are in alignment with the Black and Brown community. More power to you. We appreciate you. We see you. But once again, this is something that unfortunately exists. And this is something that, though many of the white community care to propel, and they try to justify and excuse, like racism, they try to cast aside. We see how many Black and Brown communities constantly trying to talk, but then they label them, oh, you're trying to be the victim. Yet that was the very narrative and what they've attempted to do with, like, white South Africans. They're saying white South Africans are being targeted. So are you trying to now jump on that train too of, like, victimhood? Like, which one is it? Like, you just want to only be the victim and say that you're the victim because now it affects you, or because it's affecting you, because injustice is also knocking at your door? Make it make sense. Like, you're always telling other communities of color, be that more so, or I'm talking about the white community, right? I've seen that so much on Reddit, on YouTube, that communities of color are always trying to play the victim. Yet, if we look at history, communities of color have been killed by colonizers, have been killed by the white community or individuals of European ancestry, and have not been given opportunities historically, and continue to not be given opportunities. I think the political climate of today verifies that very deeply. And once again, it causes me to encourage those that are internationals to second guess whether they want to, I feel like the best approach is always to build your country. Ideally, I would want to, go to a country, once again, that is predominantly of Black and Brown communities, so I can pour my financial resources into this country. It's about time. Like, white people have been stealing and taking, those of European ancestry, those of European descent have been stealing from the Black and Brown community since the beginning of time, and it's just unacceptable. POCs have to put their foot down, and should put their foot down, and should support Black and Brown people around the globe, and also bring that knowledge and understanding, because I find that, yes, a lot of people are coming to realize it took me time to break free of, the shackles of colonization, and I am a testament of that. But it took also talking, experiencing, living, having conversations with other POCs. Naturally, I grew up with other POCs, but it was like actually taking the time to really talk about those uncomfortable topics, because if you don't want to talk about those uncomfortable topics, you'll never really hear them out. You'll never understand. You'll never see And, you know, it affects one that also people, like, if you do injustice, and this is for the white community, if you do injustice, don't be surprised when injustice comes knocking at your door. And, you know, it's crazy because it's always like you want empathy and sympathy when it starts affecting you, but just a heads up. So yeah, I'll leave it at that because I need to leave now. Bye.